Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Talking Away the Taboo. It is Sunday evening, and tonight we are bringing on Chavie Bruk. Now, Chavie is no stranger to the I was supposed to have a baby live situation. Many of you might know her, but she's going to reintroduce herself again tonight. But I think that I'm going to grab her. Why incredibly wise. Yes, she happens to have a really deep, personal, and painful fertility story. Okay, we're both fixing our hair. Okay, I
I
did that
know. I
too, right? 5 seconds.
gotta I can't see myself until you accept my request. So now I'm just like
I
fumbling.
exactly. We're all yeah, correct. I was all
Yeah,
doing the
that's
same thing.
part of the live
Totally,
phenomenon, right?
totally. So so I was just like giving a slight intro, but I really should stop talking, actually, is what I should do.
Why?
I was explaining to people like why I keep wanting to have conversations with you and why people keep wanting to hear from you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I think it has something to do with, there are many different facets, and we're going to get into that. But for the people who don't know who you are and don't know your story, pieces of your story, please introduce yourself, Chavie.
Okay. Well, it's good to talk to you again. It's always like one of my very favorite things.
Ditto.
And okay, so my name's Javi. My husband and I were diagnosed with permanent infertility 17, 16, 17 years ago. Yeah. And we, long story short, proceeded to adopt 5 children. And I've always been really open about our journey through infertility and through raising adopted kids. That's the short of it.
I was going to say that is the short of it. And
That
for
is the
those
short
of
of it.
you, I mean, first of all, as I mentioned on our stories
Mhm.
earlier, Javi has been with us 3 other times, and you can listen to those pieces of her story if you want. And she's also, obviously, she's been lots of other places, but we're here tonight to talk about pain and talk about why a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago or two, I don't remember. You probably remember more than I do.
Recently. I
Recently, okay,
actually don't remember, but
fine.
recently. Yeah.
Recently,
Yeah.
you you were having a moment. You were having a moment, and I'd love for you to share sort of what that moment was, which got to you and then made you make the video. But the video talked about how even though it's been X number of years since you got your diagnosis, even though you have 5 beautiful children through adoption, some of whom you got earlier in their lives, some of whom you got later in their lives, but they're all part of the fabric of the beautiful, diverse amazingness of your family, and you love them deeply with your entire heart and soul.
Yeah.
And yet, so let's talk about first, what was the thing that kind of unnerved you, that made you like feel that way, and then let's talk about that emotion.
Okay. So it's very interesting because I've had this, kind of resurfacing of my grief and of my frustration with my reality in the last, I would say, year. And it's just been kind of in the background and something that I've been really picking apart in therapy and just really not, which is what I was speaking about the video, really not getting anywhere in the terms of like feeling resolution or feeling like, okay, I feel better now, but really just leaning into why I was feeling this way and trying to let it be and be okay with that. And I think the catalyst for me started off is like the underlying catalyst is age, right? So I just turned 40, and I in this year leading up to that, our bodies are amazing. They like know the body clock, and it's like you start to feel like, oh, this is nearing the end of my child rearing years, and you start to I mean, for me, I'm like, you start to panic, especially because like I'm not ready for that, and I've never given birth, so it's such a strange feeling to be like panicking about something that you've never even had or experienced, but your body and your brain kind of knows that like this window is closing, and it's just a crazy thing. And I keep being like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why do I feel this way? But it's just it's happening, right? And I, am not ready to be done with my child rearing years. And I can feel it, and I think, and then and over the last few months, or the last year actually, three of my really close friends who are my age turning 40 had a baby after many years of not having babies. And I'm like, I want that. Like, I want that experience of like, that last baby, or the baby when you're a little bit older and less stressed and more easygoing. And it's just like, it's a whole new experience when you have your baby when you're older and you have older kids. And it's just like, I have this, obviously I'm like romanticizing it in my head, but that's that's what I feel like. And then for the week that I posted the video, I had two sisters and one sister-in-law give birth in the same
Wow.
week. And yeah, they're younger than me, and it wasn't really about the age, but it's just like, you just was like the first one, the second one, like, okay. And then I was like, after the third one, I'm like, I'm actually not okay, like this is hard. And it didn't, like, I wasn't paralyzed. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't function. It was just like this underlying, like, this is bothering me. It feels yucky, like, and I feel this sense of like unfairness, you know? And it was a Friday when I posted the video, and it was like that morning where the third of my family had the baby. And I was just like, I'm taking, even though Fridays are, there's comes with a whole other amount of stress, and especially like running a Chabad house, and that's like my main, the weekends are like huge output. And I'm like, I'm just taking it slow. I'm like, I'm staying in bed a little longer. I'm making, a coffee. I'm just gonna like not push myself, and Shabbos will get done. Maybe it'll be a little bit more stressful later. And I just felt kind of compelled to share, like I shared on the video, like I sometimes wish it weren't true, but I've realized about myself that I'm a very outward processor. Like, for me to really process and sort of be okay with the feelings that I'm having, I need to say them out loud to somebody, and I don't understand why that is. Like, sometimes I'm like, it'd be so much easier or less public if I can just process in my brain, But I've realized that for me, which is why I started, my blog and started my Instagram, just because it's been such a huge way for me to almost make sense of my own life. No one's giving me advice. I'm not getting, I mean, I get feedback, but it's not about the feedback necessarily. It's about when I say it out loud and I just, you know, say what I'm feeling, and 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 am heard. Like, have you ever felt the feeling that like you just want to be like above it all? Like, I'm the human in this world that doesn't need to be heard or understood. Like, why do I, but it's just, it does. My therapist always reminds me, he goes, you're human, and humans thrive and crave and live for connection, and you want to be connected, and you want to be heard, and you want people to see you for who you are. And so that motivates me to share, because Um, that's how I make sense of it for myself. Does that make sense?
It doesn't matter if, first of all, yes,
I
actually,
think I have something
it
in my
does
teeth,
make
but whatever.
sense. Yes, it does make sense, but it also, it
Doesn't
doesn't
matter.
have,
Right.
it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't have to make sense to
Right.
me. Like, I'm not an outward processor. I'm a very internal, like, I go deep into my, like, into my bed, under my covers. Like, I need to spend days there and kind of ruminate. Like, that's the
Yes.
way I always used to
Yeah.
process my grief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't, like, we all need to do, we need to be true to the process, right? We need
And
to
not
be true
being,
to the
I
process.
feel like there's so much shame that we put on ourselves for our process. And whether you're an inward processor or an outward processor, we always feel like we should be doing it differently. And I think there's so much, to be said when you can just accept for it for what it is. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just who you are. And lean into it, because if you're spending so much time fighting your process because the universe tells you that it shouldn't be that way, it's just a waste of time, because in the end, you're going to be pretty miserable. And especially nowadays, I feel like, okay, we went through this time in social media where, you know, it was the in thing to be vulnerable and it was the in thing to share. And for people like me who have the natural tendency to do that, it worked really well. But of course, like everything, we swing at, like a pendulum, to opposite directions. And I think now there's this movement of like, you don't have to share everything on social media, right? Like there's this oversharing phenomenon, which it exists for sure. And so people are swinging the other way, like be more private, keep things, more sacred. You don't have to share everything. And that's scary for me because I was a share not according to trend. Like I didn't start sharing because it was a trend. So now it's a little scary to still want to share and still be who I am in the face of like, well, that's not cool anymore. Like we don't want to hear all your stuff.
And what about, I see a question there, we're going to get to it in a second,
Okay.
but here's my question about like privately processing versus publicly processing. And what are there things that you keep, and that, like, certainly, I mean, I can't believe I'm even asking the question. Obviously there are
Yeah.
always things that all of us keep and we don't publicly process, but I guess, how do you make the decision? Like, do you speak to your husband and say, can I process? Or like, how does, what does that decision tree look like for you?
It's a very good question. And it's definitely like a super fine line, right? Of like, sharing and oversharing or keeping certain things private. And I thank God that I have a really good intuition around that. There have been times where I've overstepped and have learned from that. Like if you're a sharer, that's definitely going to happen. But in general, um, to me it's a little bit like common sense, right? Like there's certain, like you're not going to share, what goes on in your bedroom. You're not going to share deep personal decisions. Like I also don't share like what actual, form of infertility we have, or there's certain things that are not necessarily relevant to the point of the story, like or which of my kids are Jewish or not, and what is your rules around Shomer Negia. Like those are very common questions, but those are not questions that I share. And I also am very careful with my children's story and how to protect their journey and their process. So I don't give a lot of details around their specific stories, but the fact that they're adopted and there's certain things that are like, and the process for me, like it's like it's my story too, right? So the process for me and what it was like for me, while also protecting the privacy of my children, I think it just comes with a lot of um, just thoughtfulness. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned, especially with social media, is don't act on impulse and don't post just because you feel like you're supposed to or you should. And I think I did that once before, and it wasn't even connected to my own story, but it didn't feel good after. I was like, oh, just because everyone was posting about some big political something or some big thing that everyone felt compelled to share doesn't mean that I have to. and doesn't mean that I have to force myself to like join on a bandwagon. I think that's really important to always check yourself. Like before I post anything, especially if it's personal, I always like check myself and I'm like, okay, like this is going to be out there, right? And am I okay with that? And are the people around me going to be okay with that? And that's just, there's certain like little just things that I go about in my head to make sure. And my husband and I, we have our basic like understanding of, you know, what parts of our story we share or not. So I don't like every time I post, I'm not like, can you see this before I post? Are you okay with it? It's just we have this understanding of like what, you know, what we share and what we don't. And if it's my own personal feelings, like it's never like I don't feel the need that I have to like literally check in with every
Yep.
post, you know, with my husband. And so it just I think it can't, you know, you have to be okay with sometimes making a mistake, right? Like we're not perfect, we're human, and there have been times where I was like, or one of my children said to me like, I didn't like that, or that was, you know, I don't want you to say that again. I'm like, no problem. You're right. You're right. Like I didn't realize that that was bothersome to you, like, and that's happened once or twice, and it also helps shape and help you learn like what's okay and what's not okay. And that's just kind of, and then I also like, I think it helps, I'm not an overthinker, and I'm not overthinker, I'm not a perfectionist. So that really, really helps because I don't, it doesn't have to look or be perfect for me to post. And I don't get stuck in like this process of like analyzing and overthinking and all that stuff. And there's times where that works against me. Like I get into situations where I'm like, wow, I should have thought that through better. Like this is what happens when you don't, you know, really think things through. But on the other hand, it does allow me to not get stuck in like
Right.
fear of like, oh, this, you know, this post isn't perfect and doesn't look great, or or I don't look great, or, you know, whatever. Like, I really just don't care, you know,
Right.
like this is, yeah.
I love it.
So that does,
I
yeah.
love it. So I guess going back to, this pain that you carry and and I would say also for me, there the reason why that video resonated so much with me is because I also had this like moment in time where I knew that I was never going to have any more children. It was going to be done. And
Mm,
that there I I still get these pangs of, oh, I see someone else my age and they have another child. Or also, I'm also getting older and my body is also changing. And I know that, as I gave away that last, crib, the last stroller, we stopped diapers, like that there is that piece that sits with me that I carry, and I see like when other people have it easy almost. Like it's not only that people my age, like when I see people my age and they're like continuing on
mm-hmm,
with their journey, but it's
mm-hmm,
also even people younger than me. And you just said this also with yourself, like it was your younger family members. Like when things come easy to them, and I know it was hard for me, it's not that I'm jealous. Like I'm not jealous because Baruch Hashem, like, right? Thank
yeah,
God that things are easy. And yet there is this feeling of like, oh, like there's
yeah. It
something
wasn't
about
like
this
that
that
for me.
just it
Yeah,
like it just like it feels very heavy. It feels
yeah.
heavy.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, there's when you feel pain, when you feel like your heart, or you feel pain when somebody else has something that you want, people have so much shame around that because it might feel like, oh, I'm not happy for them. But I really, really want to like really drive home this point, which I've learned over the years, is that it really has one has nothing to do with the other. They're like two parallel, you know, trains on the track. Like you are genuinely so thrilled and happy for the people around you who get the things, right? And at the same time, like you are, it's painful to watch, and it's painful that someone has something that you want that you can't have. Like, in what world is that not painful? And one doesn't contradict the other. It's not like, oh, I'm happy for you superficially, but really, you know, it's like, no, I'm so happy for you. And at the same time, like, I want that too, right? And I don't get to have it, and that really sucks. Like really sucks. Like, I'm never going to feel what it's like to have a biological child. Like, that really sucks. Not in connection or in comparison to anything else. And I don't necessarily know that if I'm ever going to be really able to process that on a very, very, whole and full level. Like, I touch it, right? I go there, and then I go there as much as I can. And then I'm like, okay, this feels unsafe. And then I back off. And that's kind of what I was saying with this whole idea of like, maybe it doesn't have, maybe you don't have to fully ever process it or fully ever be okay with it or fully be like, I'm over that, right? Like, and I literally told my therapist, I'm like, I don't want to be 80 years old and being like, I did have biological children
Right.
for me,
Right.
like,
Right.
and he's like, well, listen, like, there's a piece of you that's always going to feel that. Like, you didn't get something that you really wanted, and you didn't get something that you 100% never like thought that you didn't think that you would ever not have that, right? Like, it wasn't like you had any preparation for it. It wasn't like you were expecting, right? Like, you were blindsided. You don't get something that also is so pervasive and such an integral part of our you know, religious and value system and the way that things operate in our world. And you don't have it. You don't get it. Like, and it's really painful. And I think the reason why I feel like that video resonated with so many people is because you just plug in any hardship or anything
Anything.
that you are really struggling with. And it's like we all have things that we want that we can't have. And when you think of it that way, it's like, I don't know of any, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you've worked on yourself so much that your perspective is just like, you don't even feel that, then you've reached a level that, I have not reached. But I think a lot of people understand what it means like to have something that you, to want something that you can't have.
I
And
think,
that's,
yeah, keep
no,
going.
and that's the pain, and that's the pain that kind of comes with you. It's like your little, your little pet, right? And sometimes it's like really sleeping and it's not in your way, and I feel like for years, especially in the thick of the child rearing years that I've had with my children, it was there, but I was busy, and I'm still busy. My children are still, taking up a lot of my attention, but I also feel like that's why it's rearing up again, is because my kids are bigger and they're taking up so much energy and space. And let's be real, they're not so cute when they're big, like, and I miss the cute, cuddly, like the antidote to all the hard stuff is like your one kid gets big. Okay, so you have the next one come along and take that space where you feel like, okay, I can do the hard stuff because I have the fun stuff, right? And now it just all feels hard, right? Like, where's the fun stuff? And I feel like that's part of what started this like resurfacing of the pain and the grief is this reality of like, oh, I don't have a young family anymore. My kids are big. My youngest is almost 7, and I'm not ready for that. Like, I really, really admire and kind of envy the people who are in this stage of life and are ready to be in it, right? Like, and that's so beautiful. I kind of, that's my goal, is to be like, okay, I had this time of my life, and now I'm entering this beautiful time of my life, and there's a lot of benefits to not having little children at home, right? Easier to travel and less, less physical labor, right? There's a lot of intellectual labor, but less manual labor, and less, there's so many beautiful things to lean into. But I, I maybe will get there, but if I like, it doesn't, if, but I have to be honest with myself, and I just don't feel it. I don't feel like I'm in that place that I'm ready to be in that next stage. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm like, and also like me, I'm not even 40. Me, I'm not 40. What are you talking about? Like, even though 40 is a great age, and I think that it's not about the fact that it's 40 is a scary number. It's just like, but I'm not ready to necessarily, I'm ready to embrace all the awesome, wonderful things that 40 has in store, but I'm not ready to be done with that part of my life.
Okay, so here's my question, right? I'll tell you a story. So I have a neighbor who
My gosh, my Shoshana, my daughter's always like, I'm only 20 and I'm still a baby.
Sean, it's okay. Yes, you're still a baby, still a baby. So
Totally.
so so I have a neighbor, I mean someone who lives in my community, and I remember, what she has. I'm changing all of the identifying details here.
Yeah.
So she has four children, and her children were like getting older. They were also like, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, whatever they were, sort of in that stage. And I remember that I was like, we were chatting one day and she was saying to me, she's like, I still have my infant car seat. And I was like, and I said to her, "Well, why? Like,
Why?
why do you still have your infant car seat?" And this is a woman who's like probably 10 years older than I am. And
Oh,
again,
wow.
I'm changing all the identifying details.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And again, she said, well, because you never know. And, as a medical person, as the practical rooted, like medical science person,
You're
I'm
like,
like,
what are you
what are
talking
you
about?
talking about? That's
We
basically, I
know. We know.
was like, what? That's ridiculous. Like, why aren't you getting rid of this? And yet there's that, like, that core of that idea, right?
That
That
you're
she
not
was
ready to let it go.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I I thought she was crazy. I thought she was crazy. And yet I'm sitting here like also in a similar stage. And okay, I've gotten I'm a get rid of
Yeah.
her.
Well, my
Yeah.
my husband is too. He's gotten rid of everything. Like even if I wanted to save some stuff, he's like, if by some crazy circumstances that there's another baby that enters this house, we will buy it all again. But out with it.
So by the way, so your husband and I are very much alike in that regard.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
husband's the one who would love to save all the things. But I just I at the time I thought she was crazy, but there is this idea, right? And so here's my question to you. What happens at this point? Like, I'm sure people have said to you, "Oh, your kids are getting older," like, or they've like kind of like, you know, said some of these kind of insensitive things of like, "Oh, well, that's like that's already done." Like, how do you respond to them? How do you? I, I'm
Yeah.
not even talking about the like maybe you'll have another, but more just even the idea that they're kind of like pushing and needling around in this like very unhappy
Yeah.
space.
It really depends on who it's coming from. If it's just like from a random person that I don't have like such a, you know, connection with, whatever, like it doesn't, like, say whatever you want to say. But
Yeah.
if it's somebody that knows me well and, I do feel like a rapport with, and like I've have been told, like, whatever, just appreciate the life, circumstance or stage that you're in, like, and I'm like, I could just be like, yeah, but it's hard. It's still hard. And I think it might even be, I don't want to say harder, but I think I've never, yes, thank God I got a chance to raise amazing, beautiful children, but I've never had a chance to have a biological child. And so it's like I didn't even get it at all. So here I am trying to let go of something that I've never had. It's really elusive. It's an elusive feeling. And you try to like put it in a box or define it. And that I'm very like I always want to understand like what's going on for me, and sometimes I just have to accept that, like, this is how I feel, and it doesn't have to necessarily make sense. And not many people are in my position. Not many people have the same experience I've had, and so I can't compare myself to somebody else's experience and what somebody else process. And as uncomfortable as it is, I really, 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 the biggest work that I try to do is just meet me where I'm at, meet myself where I'm at, right? And for me, it looks like what I did on Instagram, right? It looks like taking it slower, sharing my thoughts, and why, like, what's going on for me, and that's, there's not really much else to do. Right? People say, what do you do? What do you do?
Right,
And it's like,
right.
there's not much else to do. Like, the realities are not changing. That's where the pain comes from. The fact that the realities are not changing. Um, and and I have to accept that, because if I go into that like, well, maybe they will, like, that doesn't serve me. So the realities are not changing, and what I feel like I'm being called to do is to wrestle with that, right? And to wrestle with that uncomfortable feeling, and to be okay with the pain, and understand and trust that this is what I'm here for. This is my struggle. This is where I meet God in my most authentic way, right? And this is where my service is. This is how I'm serving God, in my struggle and in my questions and in my, my little tantrums that I have of, this isn't fair, right? That's where I wrestle with God a little, and that's where, we meet each other. And I really do believe, people have different thoughts and feelings when I say that, but I really do believe that we are put here in this world, for a specific purpose, and we're all going to have a specific struggle, and the experiences that we have down here is for the evolution of our soul, to make us the best possible person that we could be. And when I just go back to that a lot. Like, this is really hard. I would not choose this in a million years. Like, this is painful. This is really, really painful. And sometimes I don't know how to absorb all that pain. And I just have to ride kind of above it, and, ride it as best as I can. And, but what gets me kind of not stuck forever is that this life was tailor made for me, right? This was like God put in his order, like Chavie Bruk, like, what is she going to go through in her life, right? And I do know that the things that I've gone through, the experiences that I've had, did make me who I am. And they did, I wouldn't be the same Chavie Bruk if I had a different life. And that, and that would be fine. But, when we look at it that way, it's just, I think it's just the acceptance that it's okay. I don't know if it's a better word, to live with pain. Like, that's kind of part of life. Like, this is really painful, and we don't have to try to make it not painful. We don't have to, like, process and work it through and make it, tie it up into a neat little box and say, I am done with this scenario. Like, I've done the work. I can put it behind me. It's never going to bother me again. And for certain circumstances and situations, that does work, right? This one for me is not going to be that way. I honestly thought it would. Like, as younger, more naive, I really thought that, like, okay, I'm done with that. Like, we don't have to go back there again. We've been through the thing. We've processed. Like, how many times to process the same thing? And I think, like, my epiphany was like, I'm done processing it, right? I'm just here to feel it and acknowledge that this is what it is. And that's just, this is my reality. This is who I am. This is what it is for me.
I think that is there for people who have been through loss, for example, right? Who've had pregnancy loss, who've had stillbirth, infant loss, there is constantly this idea that, okay, like, do the work, grieve, like, do all the things, therapy, medication, talk about it, go, like, sit in nature, go, like, be with whatever, like, do the work. And then, like, eventually, like, go have another kid. And that rainbow kid
It's
will
gonna
be,
make it all go away.
make it all go away. And we all know that that's just not reality. Like, that's not what happens. Like, are you grateful and happy and so excited about this, you know, new baby that is in your life? 1,000%. But it doesn't take away, it's not like all that pain and all that, like all that stuff gets washed away. It doesn't. It still sits, it stays, and you get this pain. Like, I mean, I sit at the Shabbos table. I have a very full, I have 5 children. Everybody knows that. And like, it's funny because I do like these stupid little, well, I mean, they're not stupid, but I do these like Parsha of the week, but make it fertility related. And so I always have something to say around the
Mm-hmm.
Shabbos table. And
Mm-hmm.
my family is always like, my kids especially, oh, we don't want to hear any more Parsha of the week, but make it fertility related. Stop talking about your miscarriages. Stop talking about your stuff. It's over. It's done. Like, let's move on. Like, obviously they know I do this work all day long, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like nobody wants to hear it anymore. But the reality, like even if I didn't do this work, like we don't get over it.
Yeah. That was what I was feeling in the moment, and it rings very true for me, and that's kind of what I said in the video. Like, what if we don't have to get over it? Like, what if we that's not our end goal. Like, our end goal isn't like, okay, now I'm over it, right? What if our goal is like, how do we live with it, right? And recognize that this is going to show up. And you might like, for me, like, it caught me by surprise again. Like, I went years without really feeling it in a real way, and then it like reared its head, and I was like a little taken aback. I'm like, but I did this work. I did this already. Like, why do I have to do this again? Like, that doesn't seem fair. Like, on top of everything else, like, we have to feel the pain
Yep.
still again,
Yep.
um but somehow that's the reality, and what I've been learning and what I continue to learn. And I'm a very like fix it oriented person, right? I just, what's the solution to this problem, right? And it takes everything in me to not try to solutionize made up a word here, but to try to like fix this, because it's almost like the problem's not going to go away, but maybe I can fix the emotion around it. Maybe I can just change the narrative, be more grateful. Like, what is it that is missing from my life that I am still dealing with this particular emotion? And to me, I come to the conclusion, like I said before, like, it's not one or the other, right? Like, anyone who knows me, like, I'm a very happy, grateful person. I don't live my life in a state of depression. I love my life. I really love, the experiences and the trajectory my life took. And I'm
Yes.
really sad.
And yes.
And yet I'm really sad that I don't get to have a biological child. What am I going to tell you? Like, that's really sad.
Right. And it is going to remain sad.
And it's going to
I
remain sad even when I'm
yeah,
80 and 90, God willing.
God willing.
It sounds ridiculous. And sad, I just want people, like, sad doesn't have to be something that weighs you down or is negative. Like, I'm living a very full life, and I'm, God willing, when I'm 80 and 90, and Mashiach will come, and I will be very
Hopefully
happy and
sooner,
oh, exactly,
much sooner.
much sooner. But that's gonna be something that I think will always remain. Like, that was painful. Like, that was a shame. Like, that could have gone differently, God,
It would have been nice if you,
would have been
yeah,
nice.
yeah, would have been nice.
Exactly.
So let me, like, as we sort of close up here, you know, we are in the run up to Tisha B'av. It is Tisha B'av, for those of you who don't know, is the ninth of the month of Av. It is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. It is the day when many, many, many calamities have happened. And, all of us as a Jewish people have been sitting with this heaviness since October 7th. And we've been sitting with lots of other heaviness in the world that has also come about since then. In on top of the heaviness that we already carry this time of year, when we know that this is a time that of sadness, this is a time when many calamities have happened to the Jewish people. So I guess, like, in sort of turning it, like, we just, like, we were in this, like, space of our lives and carrying pain in our own lives about our deep personal pain, but there's also communal pain, and there's communal grief of what we carry, and trying to hold all of those pieces also. And I think, I wanted to hear what your thoughts were about that. I mean, from my perspective, I think about everything that you just said in regard to this communal pain also. This pain is also something that is not going to go away, no matter how much work we do, no matter how many wars or attacks we win, no matter how many people are eliminated. There is a hole in our hearts that will be there forever. And I kind of think about it very similarly. Like, we can process and process and process and process, but I don't see how
But we
we're
don't ever
ever,
want to justify
right.
that pain, right? We don't ever want to have like, oh, we're over it, right? Like that would feel really inappropriate and callous. And I have a lot of thoughts on what you're just saying. First of all, as a Jewish nation, we carry so much collective grief. And I think we need to recognize that, because I do think that like when I speak to my therapist who's not Jewish, and he always reminds me, he's like, you come with so much ancestral, pain and grief, and also triumphs and, perseverance and strength, right? Like it all comes together, but nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Like we are survivors, and we have so much history that just compounds and compounds, and there's just something to think about. But I'm going to be very honest. October 7th, you know, for me in particular, I had so many complicated struggles and emotions around navigating that, and I still do. I think, especially, and I think I wrote about this in one of my blog posts, but like living in a time where everything is right at your fingertips and you're seeing everything, and you're also tasked with responding and being an activist and standing up in such a public way. And if you don't, right, what kind of person are you, right? And I found myself really struggling in like and going across the pendulum, like feeling the pain of my brothers and sisters in the land of Israel, to the point of um like par being paralyzed, right? And then realizing that I needed to get to like function, right? And so kind of like putting up walls didn't really feel that great either, right? And it's like then you have the guilt of like, how am I, living my life? And I didn't find, like, I feel like there was a lot of shame for me around like, oh, thank God, I'm not in Israel right now, and my kids are safe with me, and so I should feel so grateful, and I should be more patient with my kids. I felt less patient with my kids. I felt that I was just on edge all the time. It didn't bring out the best in me at all. And I think the expectation is that you should be so grateful. Like you aren't in a tunnel, like you aren't running to the bomb shelter every 5 seconds. And with not feeling that came the shame, right? Like, what kind of person am I? What kind of person am I that I am not, you know, like being so patient and so grateful and so, like this is just, it just wasn't like that for me. And I think it took me a long time to just realize that we all, have a certain amount of capacity. And, I like my capacity is here all the time. Like I have to operate on a very, very high level of capacity. Like I have to take a lot on my shoulders, and I have to do it, and I have to do it well. And it was almost like there's no space for this global pain. Like and I know that we're Jewish people and we're supposed to and we do and we naturally have that global pain, but so where do I stick it, right? And it almost was like this burden that was like the burden that the what's it called, the thing that broke the camel's back. What is it?
The straw, the
The
straw.
straw. I'm like the straw. I'm like, what's the thing? The straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm like, and so I dealt with a lot of those feelings. And I am still, I still struggle with because taking, and I just, at a certain point, it's just, you really just have to really know your limits and know how much you can take on. And I find myself not being able to take on that much. That's my honest truth. Like, I can't take it on that much. I have some walls, I have some protective layers going on because I do have the immediate people that I need to care for. And I'm finding myself not being able to do it all. And so, but I also don't like, I don't want to be this callous, like, shut out the world, because we can't do that either, right? We are one family. We don't want to shut out the pain of our family. So it's this dance, right, that I find myself doing. And it's not great. Like, it's just I think I'm just muddling through and like have days where I, you know, feel like I'm have it together, and there's days where I really don't. And I feel like there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of fatigue, there's a lot of um we were needing to have a lot of resilience and a lot of just the long time, you know. And I think this is just, I mean, this is my personal journey, and I know a lot of people feel differently, and a lot of people are out there going to say, like, the only thing you should be thinking about is Israel, and it's most important, and you shouldn't, and that's true, right? And I, trust me, like, it's on my mind every single day. But I think we have to understand the role that we play, and we constantly have to check in with ourselves and be like, what is important of me right now in this moment? And make that decision for yourself,
I love that. I think that, there is everything about this conversation is it's all about pain. It's all about what what each person can handle. It's all about, like, being true to yourself and knowing what your boundaries are and what your walls are, and also what your triggers are. What are the things that are going to set you off? What are the
Yeah.
things that are going to make you feel unnerved? And there is a lot personally that all of us carry, and then there's also a lot that communally and ancestrally, I think,
Globally, and like,
globally and
so yeah,
situationally and campusly. Okay, I'm making up words now. Also,
the
we're
theme
all
of the
making up
night.
words
That's
in
what we
our
do.
everywhere. I think that we are all carrying multiple pieces of this grief, all the different layers and all the different pieces of pain. And there's no right way to do it.
Well,
But I think, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and I feel like it, 20 years ago, you got to process however you wanted, and it was, and you just did the best you could, and nobody knew or cared, or it wasn't anybody's business. The problem is right now is that, which is your responsibility to manage, and I totally, believe that with my whole heart. But you open your phone, you open your Instagram, and then there's a lot of people telling you how to feel. And there's a lot of people telling you, if you feel this, then you're this. And if you do this, then you're this. And if you don't do this, then you are this type of person. And that is a really hard, there's a very, very hard thing to navigate, especially if you are somebody who is a creator, right? And who does post online. You have to constantly come back to your center, because um, it can be a lot when you have so many people who are telling you the right way to go about this, or the right way to feel, and the right amount you should be posting, and the right, or the reactions you should be having. If you aren't reacting in this way, then who are you even, right? And to me, I found that really difficult, because I would like to think that I am a good person, right? Like, I would like to think that I have a very, soft and loving heart. And I would like to think that I care about every single Jew. But if I'm not reacting or doing, you know, what people are expecting, or what people say I should be doing, that's rough. That's rough, right? But then it doesn't serve anybody or yourself if you start to act on impulse, right? Which I spoke about in the beginning. You start to just, post reactively, and post because everyone's saying you should. Like, you gotta not do that, because that's the worst. So it's a lot of confronting feelings, and a lot of just always knowing that you know yourself best. You have to trust yourself. And I really feel like there's no one right way to go about something, and nobody really understands anybody else's circumstance. And it's really easy to get on your platform and judge, or get on your platform and tell people exactly how they should, and how they should, and what they should be doing. And I just really wish people would do that less.
1,000%. And it's not only about social media, it's also in our own lives as well. This is, it's,
Yeah,
it's,
for
it's,
sure.
it's in our communities, it's on our family chats, it's on our, it's everywhere. And one of the things that we wanted to do tonight, the whole purpose of this discussion was to normalize pain, to let people feel whatever they need to feel at whatever point, and to honor whatever whatever is going, whether it's pain, whether it's not pain, whether, like, to honor the process also, in addition to the actual, whatever the end result is. And there may not be an end result, but to honor the process, to honor the struggle, and know that you don't have to be a complete and whole person in this, that you can carry so much of these pieces with you and still be figuring it out. It's okay. It's okay. You don't, like, I love the way you said, like, you don't need to have it tied up in a little bow. Like, pain is not about, like, neat boxes.
Totally. And the other like little thing I want to say is, I found for me, um, like, admitting that I was sad was one of the hardest things, because my therapist would always ask me, like, well, how do you feel? And I'd be frustrated and angry, and it's not fair. And then I would list all these things, and then he would look at me and he would go, and sad. And there was something that I rejected about sad. Is such a, I feel like it's such a vulnerable thing. Like, we don't, I think we don't hear that a lot from people say, I'm
Yeah.
sad, right? Like, we have a whole lot of other words like kids say happy, sad, right? Like, that's what but when we're adults, we really move away from this emotion of sad, because I think it's scary.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it's really scary just to be like, well, I'm sad, because you can't hide behind, like, you can hide behind anger, you could hide behind frustration, you could hide behind, indignant, you can hide behind all those kind of more activating emotions. And sad is just, maybe it feels lame, maybe it feels like you're a little kid again, right? Like, and that's kind of where I wanted to grow and take, you know, the next step in my journey, was just to be okay with being sad. And actually, like, this is a big deal. I don't think I ever say this out loud, like, to be okay with just being, this is sad. Like, and that, I think, is something that I'm really learning this year, and trying not to hide behind some of those more bravado activating emotions that are just way easier to tap into, and go behind them. And underneath that, it's just plain sad, you know?
Yes. And for all of you out there who are also feeling sad, it is okay to sit in the sad. You don't have to turn it into anything else. You don't have to change it, or, process it in a different way. It's just okay to sit in the sad.
And also, like, I just want to like honor and like hear you. Like it's also really scary to sit in the sad. Like for me, that's my experience. Like it's really scary to sit in the sad. So I sit in the sad very little at a time, right? Like I'm scared. Like I think there's some part of me that's scared. Like if I really lean into the sad, will I be able to get up again, right? So, and I know that I can. I know that I'm amazingly resilient, and but there's a part of me that's just like, don't go there totally because then you're done. Then you're out. You're never going to pull yourself back up from there. So if you find yourself like avoiding and being scared of the sad, like for good reason, right? Like it's a scary place to be. So what my work is, what I've been trying to do is, and been encouraged to do is, well, touch the edges of it, right? Touch the edges of
Love
the
that.
sad.
I love
And
that.
and then pull yourself back out when you're starting to panic or you're starting to feel safe. And what I found for myself is that I get a little deeper every time. Like the sad is less scary, or the sad can be for 5 minutes instead of 30 seconds, right? And then, but it's just it's just scary. And I think it's okay to be like that. Our emotions are scary. Like which is why I think we protect ourselves from them, right? Why we sometimes don't want to feel, right? Because it's scary. And just take it slow, and know that you're not alone. Like I think we all sit in our home and we're like we're the only person in the world that feels this way. I'm like, I am so crazy in the head. Like it's impossible that anybody is like me or has these feelings. And I promise you, there's a lot of people who are thinking
Yeah,
the same thing,
a
right?
lot. I,
A
I
lot of
a
people.
lot, and I'll just read this one comment here. Sadness to me is also a deep recognition that there is truly nothing you can change about the situation, and that it's an acceptance to a quote scary level that if we hold on, I just lost it for a second, that if we don't want to accept being like any other emotion, that other emotions feel safer. Yeah.
100%. And I'm really happy that whoever said that, I missed it on the thing, but it is, um, acceptance is so hard because for me, I'm like, there's always like I feel like I walk through my life accepting my reality and really like living my best life. But there are these little things that I don't accept, and I fight against every single day, whether it's a certain behavior of my child that I'm just like I don't accept, that this is my reality. I just don't accept it. And that's what the sad is when you get into your sad, when you're able to get to the sad place, you are finally kind of realizing that there's this is it, right? Like there's no fixing, there's no solution. And one of the other well, I know we have to finish, but one of the other really profound things that I learned was I mentioned my therapist a lot, but I mean this is where I do all my work. But I was like listing off a whole bunch of things that were going wrong and problems that I have, and I'm like, yeah, these are my problems. And he looks at me and he's like, these are not problems. Problems have solutions. This just sucks.
Oh, wow.
And I take that with me all the time. I'm like, this is my problem, and this is a problem, and that's a problem. He's like, problems have solutions. What you're saying are not problems. They don't have solutions. What you're talking about just sucks.
I'm writing this down. I'm just letting you
Right?
know
And
it's
and
it's
I looked
coming.
at
Yeah.
him and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what did you just say to me? And it really is one of the most profound things that I take with me all the time, because if you're like most of us are solution oriented people. We don't like to sit in things that we can't change, right? And we think that there is some kind of solution out there that will fix this. And some, like a lot of times, it's just this just is
Just
really
sucks.
sucks.
Just sucks.
It just
Just
sucks.
sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah,
I think a lot about that in regard to the people in our community who are childless not by choice, that they've tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and for whatever reason, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. And I love like that I mean that line is perfect for so many things, but especially like that problems have
have
solutions.
solutions.
Right.
Yeah,
This just sucks.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to just end with someone asked how do you touch the edge and then move back away from it? And for me, it's like I let my like I don't do anything fancy. Like I like, I dabble a little in breath work. I really am terrible at meditation and I try. But for me, it's like, okay, how long do I get to sit here and actually somatically, right? Like feel the sad in my body, right? And just sit with it and let it like, and also kind of notice like where am I feeling the sad in my body? Like in my heart, in my chest, in my stomach, in my back, in my head. Like just really notice where I'm feeling it and just lean and just like really not distract yourself from that emotion. And you just in the beginning, you probably will go 10, 15 seconds, right? And then your brain's gonna protect you. And so it's gonna distract you. You're gonna think of something else. You're gonna like force yourself to think of something else. You're gonna get distracted by something around you, right? And so it's just like, and then that's okay. Then pull yourself out of it and be like, okay, that was enough for today, right? And then when you go back and you visit that emotion, maybe you can sit a little bit longer and then pull yourself out when you're starting to feel panicky or you're starting to feel like I don't, I'm not gonna survive, right? So then, okay, then you distract yourself. So every time you just let yourself sit in that emotion a little bit longer, if that makes sense. It's really not I don't have like, it's not fancy. There's no like program or, protocol that I am doing. I'm just practicing sitting with an emotion without distracting myself out of it.
And you're doing it by yourself. You're not doing it in therapy. Therapy is different. This is something that you
Therapy is
do.
different, but I'll tell you that a lot of times I'll say something if you have a therapist that dabbles in somatic experience or wants you to like have your mind body connection, because as really in tune with emotions that I'm also very in my head. And I can like explain everything and everything makes sense. I can tell you about my emotion and then he'll go like, well, where do you feel that in your body? And I'm just like, like, well, that was a buzzkill, like, and in therapy, like I do that. He'll be like, okay, like all the things you just said, now I want you to sit and I want you to be quiet and I want you to tell me where you feel that in your body, right? And what does it feel like? And it's a muscle. Like in the beginning, you're just like, I don't know. Like, what do you mean, where do I feel that in my body, right? And what does that feel like? But with time, it will get more familiar and you'll start to be able to like notice like when you get the phone call of your relative having a baby, like where do you feel that in your body, right? Like I can tell you right now exactly where I'm going to feel that in my body the second I get the news, right? And then it really helps you because when you can connect your mind and your body, you're already like at a certain level processing,
Yes.
right? It's not you're internalizing, and that's always way better than not internalizing.
Amazing. Amazing. Javi, I could talk to you for hours.
Well, same. You're giving such a gift to the world, and I'm a terrible fundraiser, but I know we're having, right? This is like almost done. There's
Yes.
a fundraiser for I was supposed to have a baby. So if anyone feels compelled to contribute, by the way, Aimee didn't ask me to do this. This is just my little 2 cents. But we all know somebody, or we all have experience, or it's not like this obscure thing anymore, right? We all know somebody that struggles in this way, and Aimee's organization just provides so much support and so much love. And what I think is one of the most important things is being seen. And I feel like that's your kind of what you live to do, right? Is
That's my
for
jam. That's
That's
my
a jam
jam.
for people to be seen in that whatever journey they're going through and to know that their pain is is being felt and we care. And if there's anything that can be done to, hold your hand through that pain, that's what Aimee does. So there's,
That's why
I have
that
a link on my thing. There's links, just, you know,
yes, and
any little
that's
bit matters.
every bit matters, but that's why we're having this conversation because Javi is one of those people who really gets it because she has had and has still has right now, as we just discussed this entire conversation, she still has the pain, so she gets it. And
Well, what's
I'm
unique about my journey, which I feel like I sit in a really interesting position, is that thank God I have children, but I also don't have biological children. And so I really kind of can put myself in a lot of people's shoes, and I understand, I kind of span a lot of categories. So I really understand. I really just want to send everyone love, and also just recognize that this is painful and it's sad, and we love you.
and we love you. And we love
Yeah,
you. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions for Javi, you know where to find her.
totally, totally.
And we are at our last 24 hours. I think we're now at 20 hours of our fundraiser. Every single dollar helps. We have a match right now going on until midnight. Every dollar helps. If you love this conversation, if you want more of these conversations, please give
Yes.
back. And I'm sending my love to you. And for all of you out there, also, this conversation is, assuming the technology works when we're done.
We had one
And
time,
this, yes,
remember?
one time it did not work, but hopefully this one will.
Yeah, it
The
will.
plan is this one will be living on our page and then it'll go up on the podcast in about a week or two. So stay tuned for that.
Well,
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thanks for having me as always.
Thank you.
And we should all see the coming of Mashiach before we have to even fast tomorrow
Amen.
night.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Lila Tov.
Good night.